Alright, today I'm going to go over tempera painting techniques. First thing I want you to do is write your first and last name and your shelf number, period, and today's date. Now we're going to take some notes. Underpaint, which is the very first step, is a watered down paint. It's basically like a watercolor, so you can either write watered down or you can write a watercolor. This is the very first thing you do. You do this under everything. No matter what technique you're going to use on top, you do this first. Wet brush is exactly what it sounds like. You have a little bit of water in the brush. It doesn't need to be soaking wet, not like the underpaint, but it also should be completely dry. Dry brush is where you wipe off the brush with your paint, have it as dry as possible, has little paint as possible on it to make a texture. Popsicle stick is used to put the paint on thick, or to make lines in that thick paint, or to texturize it. And wet brush with Sharpie, you put the Sharpie down first, because Sharpie doesn't like to go on top of tempera paint. But please do not outline. Sharpie is not used to outline. Sharpie is used to make sharp, crisp lines or to write, do things like that. But no outlining, please. Now, if you remember from before, a tint is a lighter version of the color, and a shade is a dark version of the color. So we're going to do all these colors. Some of them are primary, some of them are secondary. We're doing orange, yellow, green, violet, and then we're also doing blue, green, and red, orange. I'm going to take you through the oranges. You will do the yellow, green, and violet on your own, and then I will take you through the blue, greens, and you will do your red, orange on your own. These are not all the colors on the color wheel, but this will get you an idea of how to do this. This will work for any color. Okay, so we're going to start with our underpaint. I'm going to do all mine in blue up here. I'm going to underpaint this whole section blue. So I'm going to take my blue and open the cup of blue. I'm going to take my plate, that's my palette for today, because it's easier to clean. And I'm going to take an eyedropper. First thing I'm going to do is get a full eyedropper of water. I get it completely full and I fill it, kind of slant my plate a little bit so the water doesn't run all over the place. I fill it up in there. Now I'm going to use my popsicle stick to get just a tiny bit of paint. I don't need much. And mix it in with that water. Remember, this is supposed to be a watercolor, basically. So all I'm doing is getting a little color in that water. Make sure I don't have any chunks of paint. I'm going to wipe my popsicle stick off with the paper towel, making sure I get as much as I can off. So I even go on the sides of that popsicle stick to make sure it gets cleaned up. It's going to leave a stain, but as long as there's no chunks of paint left on it, we're okay. I'm going to close my lid to my blue so that it doesn't dry out or get spilled. Now I'm ready to start to paint. I have a pretty good sized area to paint here, so I'm going to go with a big brush. When I go to paint, I'm going to dip just the tip of the brush in that watered down paint, that underpaint. Get some of it in there. And then I'm just going to paint that whole section. The whole point of underpainting is to get rid of the white. You don't want any white left. So you have to go all the way up to your edges of whatever you're painting. Now you're going to underpaint with whatever color you're going to paint with later. One of the primary colors or secondary colors. So for instance, if I want to make a blue-green later, I can still underpaint this blue because I'm going to mix my green with it later. Also, if I want to make a tint of blue, I'm not worried about that right now. I'm just painting it all plain blue. Now, to clean out my brush, I'm going to dip it in the water You squish it around. I'm not smashing it across the bottom or the sides. I'm just pushing it around. That's why you only want your water half filled up. You don't need it completely filled up. And then, to take care of brushes, you are going to wrap your paper towel gently around the metal part of the brush and wipe up this direction so that it stays to a point like this. You always want to brush wipe up. And then you make sure that there's no color here wherever you wipe. If there's color here still, then you need to go back and squish it out and wipe again. So there's my underpaint. Now I'm going to do my wet brush. So my wet brush, I'm going to take a little bit of blue straight out of the cup. Again, I'm going to just put the tip of the brush. My brush is already wet because I just cleaned it. Dried it off some, so it just has a little bit of water. It's not soaking wet. And I only dip just a little bit of the tip into the paint. I only went to about here. I did not go all the way up to the metal because I don't want paint stuck up here in the metal. And then when I go to paint, I want to keep the tip, so lightly paint with it and paint a line. I'm going to clean out my brush. Again, I did not smash the brush, and I'm start at the metal and wipe up, and you can see there's no paint left. If there was paint left on my paper towel, it means I have to clean it again. Now I'm going to go to, that was my medium-sized brush, my number 8. All of these are numbered. This one's kind of wore out, but I'll zoom in here so you can see it. Right here is the number 8, partially wore off. On this one, you can see, there it is. The number 1 is right here on the brush. On this one, you have the number 12 right here. So I'm going to go to my number 1. I'm going to get it wet and dry it off some. And again, I'm just going to get the tip of the brush in that paint. Barely let the paintbrush touch the tip. You should be able to eventually get a nice thin line with that number 1. Compared to your bigger brush, there should be a difference. Clean out your brush. And now I'm going to go to the 12. And I have a flat 12, so I'm going to get it wet and dry it off some. I have a flat 12. I also have a round 14. You can kind of do whichever ones you want. So I'm going to do the flat 12. So I'm just going to take and get a little bit of paint on the tip of the brush. I don't need a whole lot. And I'm going to paint that strip. Clean it out. And if I had room, I would do the round 14, but I don't have room, so I'm just going to do those 3. So do the 1 and the 8, and then at least one is something that's much bigger, a 12 or a 14. Up next is dry brush. And I'm going to take my green this time, I think, because I can put green on top of blue and it'll mix all right. And I'm going to go with this flat 12. You can do dry brush with just about any brush you want. I'm just going to do it with the flat one because I want that wider texture. So I'm going to get just a little bit of paint on the tip, barely anything. Now you have to wipe off the brush onto a paper towel. So I'm going to wipe most of it off onto the paper towel so I have just a little bit of paint left. And then I'm going to just make some strokes here. You can see the bristles leaving a mark and kind of a broken up section. This is good for fur, this is good for grass. any kind of creative texture you want that would be related to that is fine. Now I'm going to wash my brush out, making sure that I get it completely clean, so if a paper towel has any color to it, when I dry it off, I'm going to wash it again. Now I'm going to do popsicle stick. And I'm going to use both blue and green for this. I'll start with my green because it's the lighter. So I'm going to get a scoop of green on my popsicle stick. And I'm going to put some of that down on there. And you can see I'm making some texture with it. And I'm kind of making it thick. Close my green, open my blue, wipe off my popsicle stick before I dip it into the blue, because I don't want to get green in my blue. Not on here. Now I'm going to dip it into the blue. And you can see the blue and the green are mixing. I can also make a texture with this. Again, you can use it for color version of paint, then go for it. If you want a thin version of paint, then go for it. I'm looking for a Sharpie. Hold on a moment. All right. Well, I don't have a Sharpie right now, apparently. I'll just have to use something else. All right, I'm going to use this grain highlighter. It's the same idea as with Sharpie. All you're going to do, let's see, you can draw something with your Sharpie. Now I just outlined, right? So I got to get rid of that outlining. So I'm going to color that in. And my wet brush is still a little wet, so it's not quite working. It's blurring out a little bit, but that's okay. So if you don't let your paint dry completely before you put the Sharpie on, or if you put the Sharpie on first, they'll be fine. Alright, I got rid of my outlining for the most part, except for this edge. There, that'll work. Okay, so I didn't do a complete, so if you outlined, you have to figure out how to get rid of that outlining. Okay, so those are the techniques that I'm showing you today. Up next will be painting your tints, shades, and original colors.